In this video, we're going to cover waste management and making scraps easier to dispose of. When cutting on a CNC, you oftentimes end up with a lot of unusual and weird cuts, as we would in this sheet right here, have a fairly large L-shaped panel piece after it's cut. Here would be another unusual piece of scrap or waste that we'd have to figure out how to dispose of. And again, on the last final sheet, we'd have this weird, unusual shape. So we have ability to be able to add waste trim cuts and waste cuts. So I'm going to take a look at that now. So going into Tools, Settings, clicking the button for Waste, and I want to check the box that says Draw Waste. And it's going to draw a waste, anything that's over 100 square inches, and add it to the layer name Z-Waste. This layer name is what is used to be able to create the toolpath for that waste object. So once that is checked, and we'll see how this plays out, click Save. We could close the settings. We will have to renest for that to take effect. We will now see a green dotted line that is going to be, and that is what is considered maybe usable waste or waste that is just cut up. So as we could see, if we set it at this option, we are able to and capable of cutting these squares out, and that makes managing that scrap a little bit easier. And as I was pointing out, the layer name is Z-Waste, and we're able to toolpath that just as we're toolpathed any other objects or vectors here. So the Z-Waste is using a 3/8 cutter, cutting on the outside of those green dotted lines, and set up your toolpathing just the same way as you would any other perimeter cuts or drilling or dados. Now, it might be the case that I really don't want to have to cut all these out, and like a lot of times squares like this will could be confused and make it a little more confusing when trying to separate parts and making you think that they're a good part. So I'm going to come back into settings and make a change and make it to where I only want it to draw waste that's maybe over 1,000 square inches. Anything over 1,000, you might consider that's reusable. That you might put into the material list to have optimized. So with that changed, again, clicking Save, or close our tab, and then nest again. We now see there is no waste drawn on the first sheet. The second sheet, there is only the larger panel, and then we will have a weird, unusual shape right here to dispose of. And again, on the last sheet, one large square, and could possibly have a, some edge trimming and a weird one leftover piece of waste here. We are able to manage and cut these into smaller manageable pieces by going into Tools, Settings, selecting Waste, and we want to add cutoff lines, and I'll reduce that from 20 to 10 so we can see what is happening here. Line spacing, this is the distance between each cutoff line, and then the layer name that those vectors are going to get placed on. We'll see how this looks by clicking Save, close the settings, and again, renest. What this is going to do is give us these red lines every 8 inches, because that is what we set our spacing to be. And at the top of our list here, we have our layer name, cutoff lines. That is what we're able to toolpath. I have it being cut on the line. Now it will not cut all the way through. It will cut to the depth of the onion skin setting. Onion skin setting depth is set to 0.03. So we will not break the vacuum, and they will cut almost all the way through. For when it is done cutting, those parts in that piece could easily get broken up and thrown in the trash can. Scrolling onto the next sheet, we see those lines are there as well. And then the final sheet, we have no lines drawn on this piece, and that is because this distance is greater than the 10 inches. So we'll see how that works by going into settings, waist, changing the wider than from 10 to 20, selecting save. We'll close the settings and renest. We still have our cutoff lines, and this time we have lines drawn here because that distance is less than our 20-inch setting. And again, the 8-inch spacing is cut every 8 inches, and that is because in the settings, under waist, we have the line spacing set to be 10. We could change that greater or smaller. We'll make that 10 and save. Under the waist, we also have a checkbox to trim the sheet, and the trim allowance is set to be 0.06. We'll see what that looks like when we go ahead and save and renest. But again, the layer name is 00 waist. Selecting save, then close. We will renest, and what this is going to do is give us a vector around the entire perimeter of the sheet. That is this vector right there. That allows us to first trim this all the way down to a set size. The 1/16 of an inch allowance is the distance from the outer edge of our set material size in X and Y in offset in by a 1/16 of an inch or 0.06. We have that on our layer name. The first one in the list is waist. It will completely trim all the way around. Then we have the cutoff lines, and you toolpath all of this and all of these vectors just the same as you would any other drawing object on any of the sheets. So hopefully this is understandable. It does really help make waste management a little bit easier to dispose of the scrap and the waste material. It does add a little bit to the cutting time, so it is a balance that you could figure out what works best for you. Have a good day.